Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the SPMA Council podcast. My name is Dylan. I am a second-year sport management student, one of your co-hosts for this year. Alongside with me today is Kendra as the other co-host, and I will throw it over to her to introduce our guest.
So Blair graduated from Concordia University of Edmonton, history and sociology, and he's also a Brock University SPMA alumni before landing his role as an executive director at Alberta Artistic Swimming. Before this, Blair spent some time at Concordia in many different roles related to sport and recreation and spent a few months at Alberta Soccer. We would like to welcome Blair as the sixth guest of season 5 here on the SPMA Council podcast.
Welcome.
So, Blair, as our first question, we're wondering if you can speak a little bit more to your role currently with Alberta Artistic Swimming and just the cooperation as a whole.
So as executive director, everything runs through me. I look over the finances, the technical side of things, the business side of things. Quite literally everything kind of funnels through me. And I just oversee, the organization, the PSO as a whole. And what we do is, we run the sport in the province. So right now we are registering athletes for the upcoming season, sanctioning clubs, sanctioning teams, and then our attention is going to shift to some of the meets we host in the new year. So we host different provincial meets and then the provincial championships. And then we organize our provincial teams when we get to that point. So that's kind of what we do. And for those of you that don't know what artistic swimming is, it is the synchro swimming. So artistic swimming is the new term for synchronized swimming. Some people don't know what that means. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of us.
I actually personally didn't know that synchronized swimming was now called artistic swimming. So it's good that you mentioned that. Was there any draw for you to join Alberta Artistic Swimming? Like, what made you kind of want to go to that corporation there?
Well, part of it is, getting a director's job was always a career goal of mine. So that was part of it. But the other part of it is that it's a small organization. It's a good opportunity for me to grow as a professional. But it was just a good situation to kind of take over. The ED before me was moving on to a different spot in her career, and it was a good transition. So, yeah, it was just a great opportunity for me to jump at.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Being a director's definitely pretty prestigious to be able to say, especially so early in your sport career. But so you've been to numerous schools before for many years. So what do you think is the most under talked about skill in a sport management student? Obviously, when everyone goes to sport management or sport administration, everyone's like volunteer, make connections, talk. But what do you think is an underrated skill that more people should talk
about? Everyone talks about it, but I'll echo that as well. And I, from my experience in hiring positions, the biggest thing is getting that experience. I know everyone talks about it, but it is true. That's why everyone talks about it. If I had one piece of advice, it's go out there and volunteer or take that minimum hourly wage job and make a name for yourself, so that people know you. You post a job and there's 150 resumes coming in. It's good to have that name recognition, and the contacts saying so on and so forth. But I think for me, the biggest thing is maybe some resilience, some open-mindedness. I think to make it in the sport world, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable, I guess is the best way to say it. For me, like, I moved across the country to go to school, and then I was lucky enough to have work back in Alberta. But I know there's a lot of Brock graduates here in Alberta that are from Ontario, but they moved out here specifically for a job. I think just that willingness to be resilient, to kind of jump at any opportunity, even if it means moving across the country, making that scary first step, kind of taking a chance. I think that is how you can be successful in this industry, is just not kind of staying staying in your comfort zone, you know, being resilient, being able to, you know, being willing to move across the country, you know. When I was first looking for work and I was still in grad school, Professor Hyatt said, you know, go to Antigonish, Nova Scotia and work in a small city, right? Like just being willing to kind of jump at any opportunity and take it. You know, one, it gives you experience, but two, it kind of shows people that you're willing to do everything you can. So, I mean, for me, like I said, I dreamt of being an executive director, but if you asked me 4 years ago if I wanted to do it artistic swimming, I probably would have laughed at you. But you know, just being willing to jump at that opportunity, you know, being comfortable, take a chance, and you know, I think that's how you can make it in the world. And just understanding that you're not going to be Kyle Dubas, you're not going to be the next Leafs general manager, and your path might be different. It might not be how you dreamt of it,
Yeah.
but just being willing to take that chance.
Yeah, I think that's like a very strong point to make, especially for SPMA students, because there's a lot of people who don't take an opportunity and they don't realize that, like, in order to build a name for yourself and get to where you want to go, you have to volunteer, you have to step out of your comfort zone. You're also not going to right away get your dream job. It's about like building a name for yourself, taking it one step at a time. And I think that's really important, that people don't really understand that you have to do things that you might not want to in order to get to that end goal. Like, especially like, so I'm personally in the sport media field, so I've taken different positions, and there's some that I like more than the other, but it's about getting the experience and like being able to understand sport media as a whole. That will bring me up in a sense. And it's also like, I've worked in fan experience, like that might not be my exact like goal, but it's about building your way up, and you learn more about an industry by taking different positions and stepping out of your comfort zone. And volunteering for me personally has really helped me get to where I am. And I know a lot of sport management students, like for Dylan and I, like second year, would say the same. It's like volunteering is so important, and they advertise it so well here at Brock. So it's very good to see how they want us to get involved and they want us to get the experience, because it will help us in the long run. I don't know if you have anything to add, Dylan, but
Oh yeah, you really said it all. Exactly what I was thinking.
okay, awesome. So we can jump to the third question then. So, Blair, can you touch on the differences between the levels of sport organizations, as you have experiences working with recreation and provincial organizations?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is just, I think, just scope. At the end of the day, you know, writing a budget is the same thing, doing a budget's the same thing. Might be a different size budget, but at the end of the day, like it's just different scopes. You know, working at Concordia was a smaller institute, bigger than where I am now, but certainly a smaller institute compared to somewhere like Brock. You know, so getting the recreation things there, it's you kind of got to do the best you can with what you have, and I think um that's the biggest takeaway, I guess, for these smaller institutes, smaller organizations. It's the same thing here at AAS. It's doing what we can with what we have. I don't know if that answered your question, but
I mean, yeah, no, basically, exactly. Sorry, the different levels of recreation provincial organizations. Obviously, Alberta artistic swimming is going to be different than like Ontario minor hockey is, but in a scope of like the in-depth day-to-day operations. But just the more broad scope is going to be similar. Which I kind of have a question of attending Brock University, not something that we wrote down, but was there any like specific class, like the things that you're saying, like writing a budget is stuff that we're learning right now? Would you say there's anything that you do on day-to-day scale that kind of relates back to learning as a sport management student? Is there anything that you can like recall that really helped you for back then?
yeah, I mean, gosh, I couldn't even remember the codes, but yeah. So for me, it was oh gosh, yeah, I can't remember the codes of the classes, but The one thing I would say is just the one things that always come back is, the SWOT analysis. I mean, you're never going to escape those. Those are big in the business industry. I think it's the five, Professor Hudd will be mad at me. I think it's the 5 Ps of
Yes.
marketing. Yeah, there you go. See?
We learned about that.
Yeah, yeah. So those are, I feel like those are things you're never going to escape if you actually want to work on the business side of things in sport management. Um, so yeah, I know those, those early morning lectures when you guys are, half asleep and not all there. Like there are some good takeaways there, some things that you're not necessarily going to be able to escape. But yeah, it's kind of makes me laugh. Like even something like we're writing our strategic plan right now for the next 5 years here at AAS, and they want a SWOT analysis. The board wants a SWOT analysis. All right, so it's like, oh, I know how to do that now. So yeah, it's you'd kind of be shocked, I think, in my opinion, how much this stuff is actually used.
Yeah, that's so funny here. Sorry for just like throwing something at you that wasn't there. I just kind of thought of it because everything you're saying is like, oh, I feel like I'm kind of learning that right now. And like even like going to class, everyone's like, oh, this is so stupid. We're not going to be
Yeah.
using this. We're not going to be actually putting this out there in the real sport world. So it's funny to hear from someone that is in the sport world that's using it.
I feel like we won't ever like realize that we're gonna use this stuff until like we're graduated and like we have a job in sports. Like I feel like right now we're like, oh yeah, like we're not gonna use this. And then like 3 years from now when we have a job, we're gonna be like, oh, so this makes sense. Like I feel like that's just like something that happens when you're in school. You just like you don't realize that you're actually going to use this. Like they're not just teaching us this for fun. Like it's actually going to help us. But since we're here right now, we're just like, we can't apply it other than on like exams and stuff. So it'll be interesting to when we all have jobs and we're like, oh, Hyatt was right. We were using this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when I was a TA, I marked an assignment for Poland Scott. It was coming up with a promotion for a volleyball club. And you would be shocked how that's applicable, right? Just things for me like, trying to promote our provincial team, trying to promote different events here, promoting our awards banquet, right? So just yeah, it's just different things where you kind of you just see it as a requirement to pass your class, and then you get to the real world and it's kind of like, you guys are prepared, and you know what you're doing, and that sticks out. Like even as a master's student, right? Like I wrote my thesis on hockey fans in Red Deer, and I don't know if you guys know any geography of Alberta, but Red Deer is halfway between Edmonton and Calgary. So what I did is I went into Red Deer and I asked people why they were an Oilers fan or a Flames fan, and why, right? Because they're not anywhere closer to Edmonton or Calgary, and that's pretty specific and not necessarily applicable. But what you learn is what makes people a fan, and that's transferable to growing organizations, or how you can increase your fan base, that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, like it's not always right in front of you that what you're learning is applicable and more than just a pain in your butt, but it definitely helps you down the line.
Yeah, no, I feel like even like today in 2023, so many people are like, oh, like college, university, those are so like outdated. You just need to do your own things now. Obviously, getting your experience on your own is important, but I don't think people realize, the education, how much it'll offer you, especially in a business world or in a sport world, to be able to recall so far down the line. But enough about the business side. We want to ask you some sport questions, more some personal sided. So first off, just what's your favorite sport to watch as a fan, if it's not artistic swimming?
Well, biasly, I'll say artistic swimming. But for me, like I'm a big sports fan across everything. So it really depends on the season. Like right now, I'm watching hockey, I'm watching basketball. I kind of gave up on baseball when my team lost. NFL's going on. So really, like it's hard for me to say what my favorite sport is. I kind of just go by the season and what's going on.
What's your favorite teams? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We got to know now because we can have a little debate because me and Dylan don't cheer for the same teams. So.
Okay.
If
well,
you say
I
Leafs,
mean,
it won't sit right with either of us.
Yeah.
So.
No, but my team is almost as bad. Like I cheer for the Oilers, being from Edmonton.
Okay.
Um,
Fair.
yeah,
So
fair.
what did you think of their heritage? Like their pants, they got not a good backlash. I thought the jerseys were pretty good, but the pants were definitely not the right move.
I love the all brown look.
Really? I just couldn't look at it. I thought it was a little offsetting.
Yeah, I like the vintage look. I love the jersey, but I did like the vintage look. But a lot of people have told me, it looks like baby throw up or whatever, that kind of color.
Yeah.
So maybe they could have done a little better with that. But I personally like the vintage look. Um, I like that with the outdoor games.
I'm always a fan of throw jerseys and logos, so I love seeing those whenever they're represented.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so let's get into our second sport question. What sport do you think has the potential to grow and get much bigger than it currently is?
Do you guys mean overall or professionally?
Both?
Um, yeah, we could do both.
Okay, well, biasly, I'm going to say artistic swimming again.
Yeah.
No, but I think on as a sport overall, I think it's hard to, I mean, deny how quickly pickleball is growing, as funny as it
Exactly
is.
what I was thinking too, yeah.
Um, like I make fun of, I have so many people in my life, like aunts and uncles, my friend's mom started playing pickleball. You guys are gonna laugh, but I was watching The Golden Bachelor with my girlfriend, and they had a pickleball episode. Um, and I always laugh that it's tennis for older people, but I think it's hard to deny how quickly that sport is growing and just blowing up. Just even people in my life, the more and more are playing it. I'm even intrigued. I'd like to go find a court and hit the ball around a little bit. So I think you can't really argue with how quickly pickleball is catching up and growing. But on the professional side of things, like, I'm a big fan of women's sports. I really hope the PWHL succeeds. Um, I was happy to see the WNBA expanding as well. I hope they can keep that up as well. So I really think, anyone that doesn't really believe in women's professional sports is missing out. I do think there's a lot of room for growth there, and we see it in soccer as well. I think it's the NWSL. Like, um, yeah, I think that's kind of where the boat is for professional sport in North America is just the women's game and growing the women's game, not just in one sport, but kind of across the board.
Right, yeah.
100%.
No, absolutely. We had on a couple of weeks ago on the pod the director of game and fan experience for the PWHL, and we had a long talk about women's hockey and growing it in North America. So it's obviously great to see how big everything's coming. I'm really excited to watch PWHL Ottawa, as they're supposed to release their team name over the next couple of days or a week or so now, to be able to support a new team there. But just tying back there, I just want to go back to pickleball. I don't like. I remember playing it in like third grade gym class. It's not my favorite sport in the world to play, but I can see what the attraction is to so many more people. It's much easier to a sport to pick up than like hockey or baseball or anything else that you need a lot more. But why do you think this sport is growing so much?
Well, I mean, I think it's like you said, it's easy to pick up. And I think there's a big movement towards staying active and living a healthier lifestyle. I think that's pretty common right now, but I think it might even come back to honestly COVID, in my opinion. It was an opportunity to get out of the house and be active, but also you're pretty separated, right? Like I'd say there's a pretty close, as long as you're not playing doubles, as long as you're playing singles, there's that 6 feet there, that 6 foot cushion that everyone was looking for. So I think it gave everyone an opportunity to kind of stay a little active, and maintaining the guidelines, and it's just blown up. But it's easy to play, right? Like you're not moving too much, you're not moving too laterally, and it's an opportunity to get out of the house, stay active, and yeah, I think that's what and it's cheap, right? Like that's
Yeah,
the biggest barrier to a lot of sports. It is cost, right? And however it costs to drop into a court, running shoes and a racket, right? Like it's cheap to play.
that's crazy how worldwide pandemic can suddenly just make a sport kind of grow. I never really thought about it from the aspect of staying 6 feet apart. That's true, especially there's so many sports. Like I remember playing hockey in 10th grade. I had or 11th grade. I had to put a mask on to play, and there was no contact. And the OHL they were talking about. There's a lot of moving parts. So it's good to see that some good can come out of all the negative sides of sport. But yeah, different experiences. So what is your most memorable sport experience, either, as a fan more per se, or even just as on the professional side?
Um, well, I mean, not to bash my former school, but we didn't always find that much success. So can't say I had a lot of professional ones, but yeah, I mean, there's a couple moments like I think it was 2015. I was at a Raptors playoff game, and yeah, I don't know. It was like maybe an 8-point game with like 2 minutes left, and I was ready to go. My brother wanted to stay and see the end, and it's a good thing we stayed because Kyle Lowry ended up hitting a half court shot to send the game to overtime. And for me, what makes moments memorable is just the crowd reaction and the atmosphere and the people around you. And I had random people hugging me and celebrating with me because Kyle Lowry hit this half court shot. So that one's always a good one. And then I was in Vegas last year for the Patriots game. Unfortunately, I'm a Patriots fan. They play the Raiders, and all they had to do was go out of bounds or take a knee to send the game to overtime. And Jacoby Myers instead decided to throw a lateral, which was intercepted by the Raiders, and they scored the game-winning touchdown. And I swear to God, the stadium moved. That's how loud it was in there. Like I'm pretty sure the stadium moved. So even though that was a source of pain for me, and I didn't understand what was going on, it was pretty crazy to be a part of. So I'd have to say that. But yeah, like I've been to a lot of sporting events through my life, and I think you always just love those kind of last second, whether it's a goal, a touchdown, a basket, whatever. Like just the crowd reaction is what makes it.
Yeah, and then I even think I don't know how many, playoff game tying half court shots Lowry's hit. But if there's only one, then I have that exact same in my mind. I remember watching it with my dad in my living room. And I was 5th or 6th grade or something like that. And I don't have very many sport memories from when I was younger like that, but that stands out, even not as a basketball fan, but just like you were saying, using, sport as a unionizer and just bringing everyone together. You had, strangers hugging. I was watching a sport that I've maybe watched 4 games of my entire life, getting excited just because, my dad was cheering. I didn't really know what was going on. So it's funny to see all the different reactions around the world, type of thing like that. But that's our final question. Usually when we end the episode, we give the floor back to the guest. So really any final questions or message you have for anybody watching, just really, floor is yours, whatever you want to take it away and say it.
Well, I want to ask you a question. Are you a Senators fan?
I am a Senators fan, yeah.
So what do you feel about yesterday's news?
Okay. So I don't think
Here we
it
go.
warrants a first round pick loss for messing up on a trade. I think there should be some penalties, but just when you compare it to some of the other penalties the NHL has given out, like the Blackhawks and the Kyle Beach situation, the NHL didn't rescind any draft picks for something that is on such a higher level. And I think the NHL really needs to take a look at how they're penalizing things. When they penalized the Arizona Coyotes a couple of years ago, when John Chayka was the general manager, for doing some early interviews with draftees. They took away a first and a second round pick. I just think they really need to take a look at their morals, and they care more about, obviously it is important that teams do their due diligence, make sure that everything is up to code and following the rules. But I think when you compare it to things that are going on off the ice that teams have been doing, they really need to reevaluate how they're penalizing teams.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I agree, especially the Chicago one sticks in mind. I mean, I guess the argument there is that the other two, like the Arizona one and the Ottawa one, were hockey operation mistakes, and I don't even know what you want to classify that Chicago situation as. But yeah, no, I just thought I'd ask you, and I think it's interesting that your owner there is going to escape a fine. We'll see if he's ever more that candid again. I don't know if Gary Bettman was a big fan of that, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that it got Pure Darion out of office. I thought that was a bit overdue. after being one of the most tenured GMs in the league, and the team really hasn't done anything except for a probably fluke run in 2017. I think Brian Murray made most of that team as well. So I think that the silver lining of a horrible outcome of trading a player, not giving a no trade list, kind of, it made some good out of it, that there will now be a new general manager in Ottawa. So
Yeah, it just sucks that lost the first round pick in the process.
yeah. So yeah, okay. Well, thank you for that final question. And thank you to everyone for watching. Make sure you all, hit the subscribe button. Check us out for more episodes in the future, and we will see you guys all in the next one.